Contender breakdown for the 2023 Preakness. And first, we'll take a look at the recent history of the Preakness. As horses that have not raced the Kentucky Derby have kind of came over and won the last couple of editions. Ron Bauer in 2021, early voting in 2022, and then you had clock competing in 2017. And of course, you had Triple Crown winner Justify won at 18, Warwell in 19, the Swiss Skydiver in 20. But I say the recent trend is starting to shift away from the Derby winners. We'll see if Mage, can reverse that trend this year as he's, coming back, or he's the only horse coming from the Kentucky Derby running this race. And I think you got to go back since 1948. I think is what I read that was the first time only one horse from the Derby has entered. And this kind of surprised me a little bit because, I really think that Mage, some of those horses out of the Derby could, Mage could certainly be beatable, like two fills. I think two fills in a rematch would stand a good chance. If I was two fills connections, I'd probably take that chance. Angel Empire, I do believe this horse be pointing to the Belmont for Brad Cox, but some of the other horses you would think they'd try again going up against Mage, but I'm just surprised that nobody didn't. Uh, so you got to rely on some of the new shooters. If Mage is going to be beating the Preakness, and that brings us to National Treasure. He's trained by Bob Baffert, of course. Baffert's won the Preakness plenty of times, but one common theme I noticed with a lot of his horses is they do race on the Derby Trail. I think collected in 15 ran like third place, 14 or 15. He didn't run in the Derby, ran in the Preakness and got a third. But most of Baffert's horses tend to run in the Kentucky Derby and they move on to the Preakness. So for that, I have to say that National Treasure is not really fit to me the criteria of the Baffert horses. He's kind of the new shooter. And, he's going to be up there on the pace. As you can see, he's only like within a length, at the most 2.5 lengths off the pace. But, he's getting blinkers for this race. And I think that's going to, add a little bit more speed to him. He's been training very forwardly. So I do think you're going to see a good effort out of National Treasure. But, even on his best effort, I'm not quite sure that's good enough to get the job done. But certainly a candidate for your trifecta, superfectas. Maybe he could, for my money, maybe get second. And then, of course, you got Chase to Chaos by Ed Mover Jr. And I'm not sure why this horse in the race class are trying to fill out the field. It's just, he runs really good on synthetic and turf. But when it comes to dirt races, not really that good. In the San Felipe, he got 7 beaten by 16 lengths. And then in the California Derby at Golden Gate, lost by 6.25 lengths. So, like I said, not really sure why this horse is here. If he wins, it would definitely surprise me. Probably surprise a lot of people. Uh, if you want to look at a positive, he does got Russell for the jockey, and 6 wins and non-start, 67% win percentage, 28% jockey on the year. So you do have that going. So if he does win, you say, well, look at the jockey, incredible record. But for my money, I'm not going to put a dime on him. Then you come down to Coffee with Chris, and I think this horse is going to be one of the pace setters of the race. Uh, he was in the lead on the Federico Tessio Stakes, and then everybody knows Perform was a star of that race. Perform was really hemmed up in traffic coming down the stretch, and then whenever he got clear, he made that massive move, like cut inside the rail, then cut outside, and cut over. It looked like Perform wasn't even going to win, and then somehow managed to win. So there's any horse I plan on thinking about taking out of that race have to be Performed. It's not going to be Coffee with Chris, even though I do love my coffee, so that'd be kind of a name angle for me. Maybe I do, like a smaller bet just for the name for my purpose. But, for real, like, calculated bet purposes, I don't think Coffee with Chris is going to be on my tickets other than, that little few dollar bet for the name. And then you got Red Route 1 for Steve Asmussen. This horse is raced on the Derby Trail a lot. Kentucky Jockey Club, Southwest Rebel, Arkansas Derby. Always comes with a run, not always good enough to get first. 2 wins from non-starts. He would be a good candidate to finish in the Superfecta. Won the Bathhouse Rose Stakes at Oaklawn in April. But the field he beat, I didn't think was really all that great. We had probably a lot of second, third tier horses out of there. So he was expected, even though odds went 2-1 in the race, didn't really, surprise anybody by the win. But I do think the waters get deeper here. And when it comes to closers, probably the one I'm more intrigued by is Perform. And, as recently talked about him, he was the only winner out of this race. I have to be interested in, bringing him back, just seeing how he ran. But looking at the history of the race, I went back, and none of these horses have really done anything when it came to, like, any of the Triple Crown, the Preakness, the Belmont, nothing, like Diamond King, Always Mining, Happy Saver is probably the best horse out of the bunch. You got the Reds and Joe perform. So for me, I don't want like that's kind of a major turnoff for me on this horse. But at the same time, he's trained by Shug McGahee. Uh, they paid $150,000 to put the horse in the race. So you do have to respect the ownership is putting their money where their mouth is, and these are fairly good owners. Woodford Racing and Phipps Stable, not they're kind of used to being on some of the bigger races. So for them to put their money up, they're not just some low owner just trying to shoot for the stars and off that performance. So this horse is going to be live. Just wonder if his best effort is good enough to get the win. And I would say, if you're playing like a trifecta, certainly, box and put him in all three spots. If this horse didn't win, I wouldn't be surprised. I do expect the top four finish out of the horse just based on that, performance. And then he's looked a lot better last two races. He did race against Mage at Gulfstream going 7 furlongs and lost. So you'd have to keep that in mind. But Mage is also coming off that 2-week turnaround. But, certainly keep performing, on your tickets. And then Blazing Sevens and, trained by Chad Brown. You probably see this angle before, horse skips the Derby, then goes to the Preakness. And that was the case with cloud computing and early voting. So for me, I would say Blazing Sevens, could certainly win the race. And if the track comes up muddy, I definitely would bump him up. His best performance so far was in the Grade 1 Champagne last year over the sloppy track. So I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like for the Preakness, but definitely, keep Blazing Sevens in mind if the track comes up muddy. And you got First Mission. This is going to be my top pick for the Preakness. Let's start with what I do like. He's got Louis Size as the jockey, owned by Godolphin, who's winning nearby everything in sight right now. Every time Brad Cox talks about this horse, he talks about him with a lot of confidence. It seemed like when he talked about his Derby horses coming in, if you watch the interviews, it was almost kind of that generic, trainer talk. Whereas when it comes to this horse, it just seems a little more like authentic with what he's saying about the horse and just a little bit bolder wording, saying like fantastic works and, just work great, training good. It's kind of like this horse is fantastic. This horse, is looking better and better. Yeah. So I like hearing that because it's just a stronger tone in the trainer. One of the downsides is, First Mission's, only stakes race for the Lexington. And when you kind of look at the history of the new shooters coming into the, winning the Preakness, they generally race in a major race on the Derby Trail at some point. Look at early voting. He ran in the Wood Memorial. Ron Bauer, ran in the Bluegrass. Cloud Computing also ran in the Wood Memorial. So these horses were generally, hot on the Derby Trail at some point. And I don't like that for the horses. Kind of scares me a little bit because the biggest one's Lexington. And certainly, if you're looking at history, somebody like a Blazing Sevens or maybe the number one National Treasure would certainly, fit more of that mold. So, that'd be the turnoff. Maybe a Red Route 1 would fit that trend racing these bigger races. But, keeping that in mind, still Brad Cox is a trainer. He did try this angle with Owendale a few years ago, and Owendale got a good third. But I think this horse might have a little more potential than Owendale does. So for me, First Mission will be my top pick. I'm going to be playing against Mage. If he wins, it won't surprise me. Certainly make for a good storyline going to the Belmont. But I didn't bet him at 15-1. I don't think I'm going to bet him at even money. You got to try to play against the horse that I don't think is going to win the Triple Crown, in my personal opinion. I might put somebody at National Treasure in second, or maybe try to do Perform. See if he can get up there and get second at long shot odds or something. But I got a feeling he's going to take some of the wise guy money, and this 15-1 will probably bet down to 8-9-1. But keeping that in mind, certainly I think Mage could definitely win the race. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. I think to make money in this race, you're going to have to play against them. And for me, First Mission will be that choice. Putting them on top and exacta than trifectas. Probably going to stay away from win bet purposes for this race, but